Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Aditya here. So, we will continue our AWS comprehensive course. In that, the next topic I am going to cover is Lambda versions and Aliases. So, now in this session, we are going to cover what is a version and how it is useful for us, and also what is alias and how alias should be used with versions for our benefit. So these details we are going to discuss in detail in this session. So we'll start with version. So with respect to version, right, as we know about versions in software. So usually in software industry, we usually use the versions. So whenever we deploy a release or fix the code to move higher environment, we will create a version, right? So whenever we are releasing some build, right, to production, that means the build was finalized. So that build we are not going to change in future. That means it's fixed. So that is immutable. That is called version. So we'll create that immutable version and deploy in the production usually in day to day our software lifecycle, right? So also any new updates. For example, you deploy one version in the production and client comes up with another requirements and you need to create another version, but you are not going to change the previous version. You will take the previous version code and you will create the new feature on top of it, and after that you will create another version, not the previous version you modify it. You will create another version, and that version also become fixed no, and you will deploy that version to the production for the users. Okay, so in Lambda also versions means the same. So this versioning is the same versioning what we are talking in our day-to-day software lifecycle. So until now we are working on latest version. So whatever code we are working on, right, whenever you create a Lambda function, it will show you a text editor where you can edit the code, right? That is latest version. That could be considered as latest version. That is mutable in fact. So you can able to modify the code. So any modifiable code we are working on in Lambda is dollar latest. So that means it's dollar latest version. So that version is a modifiable version. So that means your modifiable code, and you are not supposed to use this at dollar latest for your production releases, because if you want to use any release or version for production, you need to fix that version. So remember, this dollar latest is the code what we are working on, but on top of this dollar latest you can able to create versions. Okay, and as for our understanding, right, versions are immutable. So once you create a version from the current code, that is latest code, then it will become immutable. So if it is immutable means they can't be modified, and they will have that fixed configurations and application code. For example, at that point of time you have selected some configurations, for example timeout to 10 seconds, and concurrency you enabled to some provision concurrency, and you made some changes in the code, in the application code. Those changes you can't modify after that. So after that, if you create a new version, right, you need to work on dollar latest code, and in the dollar latest code, right, you can able to modify the code, and you can maybe you remove the provision concurrency, maybe increase the timeout, whatever the changes you did, and again you will create another version also. Okay, likewise the versioning works in the Lambda. And if you want a new version, then work on dollar latest and create a new version. Here the dollar latest version is mutable. So in Lambda, dollar latest represent the mutable code where you can edit and you will create version on top of it. Okay. Now with respect to versions, right, usually they will increment like 1, 2, 3. So in Lambda, if you create first version from the dollar latest, it will ascend with a numerical value 1, and the second one will be 2, 3, like it will increment. And version should have their own ARN also. So like how Lambda has its own ARN, EC2 has its own ARN. ARN means Amazon Resource Name. So even versions also has name. By using that name, you can refer a particular version. For example, version 1 should have one name, that is ARN. Version 3 has another ARN. So you can use that ARN to refer different versions. You want to use one version, you can use one version's ARN. If you want to use two version, you can use second version ARN. So each version's ARN are different. So you can uniquely identify those versions using those ARNs. So one good thing is these versions we can access any point of time. It was not like we need to only access latest version. All the versions are accessible at any point of time. That means I have latest code, that is my modifiable code, and along with this modifiable code you created few versions in past. Now currently users are pointing to version 3, that is the latest version, but they want to access or they want to roll back to the version 1 for some bugs in the version 3. So they can do. They can roll back to the version 1 at any point of time because versions are available in the Lambda, so that you simply point your users to use version 1 instead of version 3 until you create a new version that is bug free. Okay, so that is the advantage of using versions. I hope you understand about these things. For your better clarity, I will show you a flow diagram. So here, right, this is latest version. So latest version in the sense this is the code what you can able to modify in Lambda. So whatever you see in the Lambda, you can able to edit, right? That is mutable code. That is latest version. And once you are finalized with code and you are good with configurations, you want to deploy that code in production, right, or test environment, you will create an version from that, for example version 1, and this is immutable. So whatever code here and configuration, it will be available here, but if you change anything it won't be changed in version 1 because version 1 is fixed now. But you have made some other changes or some bug fixes on version 1 and you want to deploy now the bug fixes to the users, right, since version 1 has some bugs, then you have to create another version with this latest code changes and configurations. Now this version 2 will be used by the users and bug free code should be supplied or provided to the users. So this is how the versions works. I hope you understand, and I am moving on to the next topic, that is aliases. So what is alias? So simply if you see SQLs, right, in we have alias also. That means it's an pointers, like since we deployed or published the versions. So usually in Lambda language, right, whenever we create a version we call it as deployed or published. So published is the Lambda's way of saying we created a version from latest version. Okay, so we deployed or published the versions, let's say version 1, and which will be good and it is pointed to the users, and version 2 that is still in the test phases, for example. So you created two versions. Version 1 is the previous one which is already supplying to the users, and version 2 is the latest one and it is in test phase. Once test is good, we are going to deploy that in production, right? Now you are good with test version. Now you are good with version 2, and version 2, then you need to point all the applications who uses Lambda application should need to be updated to use version 2. Okay, since all our users using version 1 previously, that is in production version, and version 2 is now test version, and we are good with test version now. So testing is good, you want to users to use the version 2 instead of version 1, then what will happen, users has to be update their code, right? Users has to be update their code to point to version 2. So that is what this point. So applications who uses Lambda application, so our Lambda, right, could be used by the users, some other applications, they need to be update to version 2. So whenever one version is changed, they have to add another version ARN, right, new version ARN in their code. But that is not a correct way, because if you have 100 applications using your one Lambda application, right, your one Lambda code, and you change the version and you say to all those 100 applications use this version 2 instead of version 1, then what they have to do is they have to update all their code to use your version 2. So this is not a perfect solution. So to avoid that or to fix that, or the better approach that Lambda comes up with is alias. So in order to avoid that, the end users or applications should use the alias. So here now instead of versions, instead of directly pointing to the versions, user point to aliases. So the advantage of pointing to aliases is it can be switched between versions. For example, you created a alias to one user. That alias is pointing to production 1 currently, version 1 currently, that is in production. Now in future you want to switch to the version 2, right? Instead of other applications changing their code, you will just go to your Lambda application and update your alias to point version 2, so that users no need to update their code, they can directly access the version 2 through alias. So that was the advantage of using aliases. Okay, usually aliases are like pointers to the Lambda version. So as I told, it's a pointer to the Lambda version, and you can switch alias from one version to another version. So end users or applications no need to update anything at their end. That is the main goal. So they don't need to update anything at their end. We need to just point the alias to new version in Lambda. So you need to update Lambda, and you would say point to new version instead of, right, you update alias to the latest version. In our case, that is the test version. So there is no production version, that will become future production version, because that is good in testing, right? That is the advantage of using aliases. For example, I will give you an example even clearly through flow diagram. Okay, we can create dev, test and prod alias and point to different versions. Okay, so here in this example what we are going to do is we will create three aliases, and we have three versions also, and we'll see how the flow we can change by using the aliases. So here, right, aliases are mutable. As I said earlier, aliases are mutable. You can switch between versions. Now we have one version, that is latest version. This is our current code, that is mutable, and we have version 1. This is our current production code, which is unmutable are immutable, and also we have version 2, which is the current testing code. So this is the production code, this is the testing code, and this is also immutable. Okay, now we created alias for latest. So latest usually point to dev alias because it is in development phase. Anytime you can change this code. And version 1 is the prod alias because this version 1 is using by the external users or clients, and version 2 is the test alias, that is version 2 is future production, they are testing it. If it is bug free only, they will point to the prod alias. Okay, now we have three aliases and three versions, and we are pointing dev alias to latest, prod alias to version 1 and test alias to version 2, and end users using the prod alias only because the customers will only use prod alias because they want stable code, not in bug code. Until and unless you test the code, it is not advisable to point to prod alias. If you are good with the code, then only you have to point version 2, like point prod alias to version 2 instead of version 1, so that end users will access version 2. So we'll see that. Now, right, aliases enable us to perform canary deployment. So we understand, right, what alias can do. You can switch one version to another version, right? And end users can no need to change anything because they are using prod alias only. But if you change, you can switch inside the Lambda to use version 2 so that they can directly access version 2 instead of version 1. Okay, so and by switching this one alias to another alias, we have different types of deployments. Okay, in that our aliases provide us is canary deployment. So alias will give canary deployment. So what is canary deployment is it's weight based deployment. So what we can do, right, in the Lambda function, we can say prod alias to point both the versions, right, both the versions, and we can say prod alias to use 80% 80% use still uses version 1, and we will point prod alias to version 2 also and give some weight, that is 20%, right, they will use 20% of the users use version 2. Now by using this canary deployment, what we are saying, still 80% of the users can use version 1, and a small part of users are tested with version 2 in the production itself. And in the production, if any kind of failures here, we can revert back this 20% to version 1 itself. So we can make 100% to point to version 1. but these 20% was good. The small amount also finally declared, or finally we can see good. Then what we do is we will remove the alias we will remove the prod alias to point to version 1, and we will mark, right, version 2 with 100%, so that prod alias all the users will use version 2 instead of version 1 because it's bug free. So this is called canary deployment. So instead of suddenly switching over to the new version, we are giving small amount of users to use version 2 and maximum amount of the users to use version 1, so that if no issues in the version 2 in future, we will completely switch to version 2 like this 100%. Okay, that is what here I have given the points. Now, right, like versions, all these alias also get their ARNs. So alias also have their ARNs. By using ARNs, right, users can able to access the alias. Even this user can able to access dev alias. Even this user able to access test alias. But for the end users, usually we will give prod alias only, right? For internal applications, we will use dev and test alias. For QAs, they use test alias. For development activities, we can use dev alias. Okay. So here, the good to remember is an alias don't reference another alias. For example, here alias is referencing to version, but you can't reference, so you can't reference dev alias through prod alias. That is not possible. You can't point them. You only refer versions. And final point, if you observe, by using alias, we are providing a standard configurations for our event triggers or destinations. So here event trigger or destinations should be considered as end users. So we are giving standard configuration to them. So they may use some event bridge to trigger this alias, or they may use some API to trigger this alias, whatever they can able to trigger, but they don't need to change anything because we are giving a standard configurations. I will give prod alias ARN, that's it, and I can switch between whatever version I want, right? Based on the bugs, right? If version 2 has bugs, I can switch over to version 1. So like that, by using alias, right, I can able to switch over different versions, and for the end users, we can give you a standard configuration. They don't need to change anything at their end. Okay, I hope you understand the concept. We will meet in the hands-on session. Okay, for hands-on section, I opened my AWS console. In the AWS console, right, what we are going to do is we are going to open the Lambda, and I'm going to create a new Lambda because I have deleted the previous Lambda as a cleanup process. But yeah, if you have existing Lambda, you can see the existing Lambda itself. But I'm creating a new function, and I know you how to create a new function. I'm believing that since we have created these Lambda functions from the past sessions, so I'm not going to explain anything here. I'm creating a new Lambda function. That's it. I'm giving name as Lambda versions demo as it is, and creating the function. So once this function created, first we'll start with the versions, and we'll explain how to create a version and how to see the ARN and how it is not allowing us to modify the code, right? Those and all we'll see now. So this Lambda versions demo, Lambda was created. So by using this Lambda, right, first we'll go to the code, right? The code what is happening is here we are saying hello from Lambda. So we'll do one thing, we'll say hello from Lambda version 1. So we'll call it as version 1. And always remember, whatever code we can able to modify, this comes under dollar latest version. So this is latest version, but latest version is not immutable, it is mutable, so you can able to change. And here I am deploying my changes, and now I will test here by using some dummy test event, and we got the status code 200, and also in the body we are saying hello from Lambda version 1. Now we are good, right? And now, right, if you in your real world scenario you write your code and you are good with the code, right, and you want to fix the version, so how can you do that? If you scroll up to your Lambda function over you, right, on the top you will have this thing called actions. So if you click here actions, you will have different options like publish new version, create alias, deploy to Lambda at edge, and even delete function. So as I said in the theory part, creating a version in Lambda called usually deploying a new version or publishing the new version. So here you can click here by publish new version, or right, or other way is you can go to this versions tab, and here you can have publish new version option or publish new version option. Okay, either way you can do. So I am choosing the actions and creating or clicking on this public new version, and here you got a pop-up, right? Publish new version from latest, and here latest is, as I said, is latest version is an mutable one, and it is your latest code, so you can change it. So here he has provided some information also. Publishing a new version saves a snapshot of the code. So what we are doing, this latest file or latest code snapshot we are taking, right? Code and configuration of the latest version. You need to deploy code changes in latest before you can create a new version. So any new code changes, first you will deploy in the latest and test it, and you modify it, because in only latest you can able to modify. And after that, if you are good with those changes, you just fix a version. You can create a new version on top of it. Any triggers you added to the function are not saved to the new version. Okay, so if you add something in latest, right, those cannot be added to the new version. You can't change the new version's code. Okay, if you create a version, you can't able to change code or configuration for a particular version, but you can always change your latest version's code. Okay, dollar latest, that is not version we created. Now I'm publishing here. Here you can give some description, right? I'm giving version 1, that is optional, and I'm publishing this code. We'll see. So published, right? You are in version 1. You are not in the Lambda. Look, you are inside the Lambda's version 1. And if I scroll down here, if I go to the code, right, I don't have any option to edit the code. Look, I cannot able to edit it because it is fixed. And even in the configuration, you are unable to edit the VPC look, and few things we can able to edit, and you can unable to edit the configurations. Look, you are unable to add any logging, and you can unable to add file systems, right? So few configurations we are unable to edit. Even look, the memory and all you are unable to edit, but you can able to create alias here. But yeah, we'll discuss about alias later. So you created a version, and this version is not allowing to edit because version is fixed. As I said, it is immutable. So I'm coming back to the latest version, right? Here you can select the latest where you have only version, that is version 1, and you can come back to the Lambda. And here, right, if you scroll down the versions tab, you can able to select different versions. Currently you have only for one version, right? You can able to publish new version also. We'll do that. So now we will publish from here. First go to the code and we'll change the code. So currently we said version 1, we said version 2, and deploy the code first, and changes are deployed, and we'll test now. Yeah, it's printing version 2, right? Now we will publish a new version from this versions tab. We have already one version. I'm creating the two version now. Publish new version, and I am saying version 2, just an optional thing, you don't need to add, and publish it. And now you are in version 2, and in version 2 also you are unable to edit your code and change your configurations, few of the configurations, like you can unable to change memories and all, right? And are unable to edit anything here. So few things we can add, and few things like VPC monitoring tools we're unable to add. Okay, now I'm coming back to the Lambda. So we have two versions now. Version 1, which is your production version, for example. Version 2 is your test version. For example, you are testing it. If you are good with version 2, you can point to the version 1. That is the intention. And dollar latest is your latest code. So whatever the code you can able to modify it, that is your latest code. Now you are good with versions, right? And also, as I told, right, if you go to a particular version, each version has its own ARN. Look, version 1 has its own ARN. By using this ARN, users can able to access a particular version. Okay, but that is not a good practice, right? Because if the user, right, if they use the version ARN itself, if they want to point to the new version, they have to change the ARN at their end. That is not good. Instead of that, we need to use aliases. Now we'll see the aliases. Okay, versions is completed. You have created two versions, and also you have one more version, that is your latest version. Now what I am going to do is I am going to create aliases for these versions. And you know, right, what is the use of aliases? Aliases are mutable and which will point to the versions, so that you can switch over different versions by using only one alias. Okay, so in this example I am going to create three aliases. The first alias is dev, okay, which is pointing to always latest one. So dollar latest is the mutable one, that is dev, and I'm saving it. Okay, this is, now we come to the alias page, alias dev, and which is using latest. Okay, now I'm coming back to the lambda, and again I'm going to create one more alias, that is prod. I will call it as prod, and prod usually point to the stable version. For me the stable version is version 1. I'm saving it. Okay, alias prod was created, it is pointing to version 1. And coming back to the lambda and going to aliases and creating the final alias, that is test, my test alias, and which is currently I'm testing version 2, so I'm saving it. And test alias got created, which is pointing to version 2. Okay, I'm going back to the lambda. Now we can see, right, dev is pointing to version dollar latest with weight 100%, and prod is pointing to version 1 with weight 100%, and test is pointed to version 2 with weight 100%. That means all the users who are accessing this alias will point to the version 2 only with for 100%. Okay, so we are good, right? So you can able to access your dev by using this, you can able to access prod by using this. So here I will go to dev and go to test. Here I need to create a test event, so I will create a test event. Now no need to create, directly click on test and it will show you are in version 2, right? Because our current code still have version 2 only. So we'll do one thing, we'll say latest. So latest is your mutable code, and I'm going to test, I'm going to aliases now, and I'm going to dev. So if you give users to the dev alias, they can able to access the dev only. Look, I will now test it, and you can able to see the latest code only you can able to access by using dev alias. Similarly, I'm switching to the prod alias, and if I try to test the prod alias, right, it has to show version 1, right, because we pointed version 1 as our prod. So version 1 code, whether it is coming or not, we'll test now. It is loading, so click here test event, and you can able to see version 1, since prod is pointing to version 1. Now similarly I'm going to test alias, and I'm going to test the test alias, it has to show version 2, right, and hello from lambda version 2. So now you are good, right? By using aliases you can point to the versions, and the second point is you can switch over the versions, right? So we'll see that point. Now we'll come back to our aliases. In the aliases, right, we have our prod, so we'll edit the prod alias. So in the prod alias, right, you have actions, you have general configuration. So in the prod alias, you come to configuration. In the general configuration you will have this option called edit. In the edit you are pointing to version 1, and here no you have this weighted alias option. So previously we haven't explored that. Now if you click on here, right, you can add additional version also. So I can say version 2. Now here I can shift weight from the version 1 to version 2. For example, here 100% users in the product prod alias, right, using version 1, but I want 10% users to use version 2 also, and 90% users use version 1. Okay, like that you can add your weights, so that weighted alias, so that some users use version 1, some users to use version 2, and everything is stable, you can finally switch over to version 2 itself. And for better example, I am increasing the version 2's weight to 50%. So 50% of the users use version 1, 50% of users uses version 2 in the prod alias. Prod alias. We'll see now. I'm saving it. So here you can able to see, right, version 1 will be used for the 50 for the users, version 2 will be used for the 50% of the other users. Version 1 will be used for the 50% of the users, and version 2 will be used for the 50% of other users. Now I'm going to test this, and I'm going to click on test and go to the details now, and here it says version 2. So now you got the response from the version 2, but previously prod version is usually points to version 1. Again I will test. Look, now you got version 1. Again I will test. You got version 2. Again version 2. Again version 1. Again version 1. Again version 2. So like that, 50% of the users can able to access the version 1, and 50% of the users access to version 2. And if you see no issues with version 2, right, in future, then you can again go to the configuration, edit it, and here you can make it 100%, or you can do one thing, you can directly change, uh, right, you can directly change to this thing. So first make it none, weighted alias, and after that here directly switch to the version 2 itself and save. And if you test now, right, you will always get the version 2 only, not version 1, because you have completely switched to version 2. Look, we're only getting version 2, and here also in the alias overview you can able to see version 2 only pointed, there is no additional version. So this is how you can do the canary deployment by using the aliases. And as I said, alias has its own ARN. Look, it has its own ARN. You can give this ARN to the end users so that they don't know what is happening inside the Lambda. You are only responsible for changing the versions of this alias. Okay, I hope you understand the concept. And if you like this concept, like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you want to learn more things. Thanks for watching. Bye.